what state you can put in. You can do a formula or you can just hard key it in if you want to.
All right.
Okay,
Recording's good to go.
Yeah, so you actually don't even have to click up there. You can do it straight in the cell. So hit save real quick. So if you ever start messing up something, okay, you save it. Okay, yeah. So there you go, say equals. And then we're going to do open parentheses. Then scroll over to 5,000.
So Seth, I saw you're from Sarasota.
I am.
So I grew up in Sarasota. So I went to Cardinal Mooney High School.
Okay.
And yeah, so I was there up until college, until I left, and now I'm in Atlanta.
Gotcha. What year did you leave?
Graduated high school in 2011.
Same here as
college
me.
in 15. That's funny.
Same. Yeah, I actually went to Lemon Bay in Englewood.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yes, I moved up here 4 or 5 years ago after high school, and then went to college at USF here.
Okay. Good deal.
Yeah. So you know all about my roots then. I guess I know all about your roots.
That is true. All the time.
Yeah, it's not a bad place. I plan to move to St. Pete here at the end of this year though. So
nice.
Something a little faster than Sarasota.
That'll be a nice change of pace.
Absolutely. All right. So, and we'll jump in this and start talking. And when Megan gets in, we can fill her in.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and then I'll kind of talk through the rest of the parts. So we went over a quick discovery last week, and we talked about some of the processes that we're doing and how we're going to be receiving in these masks. And they're coming from on the water, meaning that they're coming in a container, and that we need to do two things. We need to receive them in and take ownership of that inventory before they're actually here. And then we need to physically receive it in also. So it's going to be two transactions basically. So we're going to walk through that process and then just go through the entire flow of the warehouse and how the Scanco piece automates that process.
Great.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm hearing some background noise. I'm not sure if it's.
I don't have anyone. Alex, is that someone in your background?
I'll mute my mic. There's other people in the room.
Okay.
Gotcha. All right. So, we're going to go through those transactions. So the main transactions that we're going to go through today are the receipt of goods, obviously that on the water piece, the inventory receipts we're going to touch base a little bit on. We're going to go through transfers, physical counts, and then the picking and shipping process. So everything that has to do with the distribution side of how those masks come in and then how those masks come out. Sound good? I know that you're muted, so I'll give you a second.
All good.
All right. Perfect. So the first place I like to start is this sales profile right here. So you should be able to see my screen, and this isn't the application at all. This is literally just the profile settings for the app. And I like to always start here and show this because it kind of gives you an idea of how specialized, I guess, you can make each profile, or how specific, I should say. So things like an item inquiry on the handheld, when we're looking at the handheld, we can display different things that we want the people actually using it to see. This is profile specific. Same thing as I just flipped over to the PO receiving portion. Things like allow over receipts, collecting batches, things like that, we can turn on and off based on those profiles. So it just kind of gives you an idea if you don't see something or you want to see something on the handheld, we're able to come in here and turn it on or turn it off. Make sense?
Makes sense.
The next place I always like to start is just showing you the devices that are going to be quoted out. So once we're done with this, I will be presenting you with a quote. Typically, this is the device that you will see, and in your situation, as we talked about it a little bit, this is the device that we're going to go with, unless there's a different device that we want to talk about. But this is the TC20. This numeric only keyboard is the one that the typical consumer uses. As you can see, it's about the size of a smartphone. So it's familiar. It's not very big. It doesn't really have a big footprint. A couple of nice little features about it is it's a Zebra Motorola unit. They're leading in the industry for warehouse automation when it comes to the actual scanners. It has these little buttons and actually acts as a walkie-talkie as well. So some just little features that customers typically want to know about them. Any questions on the scanner?
Not yet.
All right. Now we're going to actually jump into some transactions. I'm going to go ahead and AirPlay. Oops, I think I already have it. AirPlay my scanner. And what I'm using is just an iPod Touch with a scanner attachment. I work off a Mac, so it's just a little easier to AirPlay it. But everything's going to look exactly the same and work exactly the same on those TC20s. So I'm going to show both Sage and both the Scanco warehouse portion. I like to do this to kind of show you the interaction and how real time we actually are. I know Brian went over the Sage presentation Thursday or Friday, I think it was. And I know Brian does a great job. So a lot of this is going to look a little tedious when it comes to like me creating purchase orders, but I just like to show you the flow.
Great.
All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a purchase order. I'm going to do two. I'm going to do a normal purchase order and then I'm going to do an actual on the water purchase order. They're going to be different. I'm going to select my vendor. Again, this is going to look a little tedious, so I'm going to kind of try to fly through it. I'm going to do 8971. And we'll just do one more. I'm actually going to write that purchase order now. So that's my first purchase order. It's just a normal stock standard purchase order. It's not an on the water. The on the water one is going to be a little bit different. So as I create that purchase order, you're going to see this on the water button right here. This is basically telling me, my system, that this vendor is on the water. We are receiving it in, telling the system, hey, we need to create two transactions is kind of the quick and dirty version of it. This right here is actually the receipt date. So it's going to automatically be a month out. Obviously we can change this and I'll go through the settings here in a second to show you where you can change that. But this is saying that this is my order date, but this is the date it's actually going to be received on land physically in inventory. I'm gonna type.
And so if you're uncertain about that date, so a lot of our inventory items, we don't really have control of when they're going to get to the port. Do you have to have a date in that field right there?
So yes, it's going to require you for a date. Now you could put it out. You can say, I want to put it out 60 days. And if it comes in early, we're still going to be able to receive it in. We're not saying that you have to receive it in that date. What we are going to do is we are going to flag you. It's going to, when I go into some of the settings here in a second, it's going to flag you and say, this was supposed to be received in this date. It's going to come out red and say it's not here yet.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and throw an item on there. Actually, we'll just do 6655. And we'll go ahead and accept. So this screen right here, if I go to this in transit on the water, is some of those settings that we were talking about. So as you can see at the top, it's going to assign that warehouse code. This bin location, we'll jump more into multi-bin here in a second. But because we're talking about a multi-bin environment and what on the water does, it associates the bin that it's in with the PO number. So basically saying that this on the water bin is tied to that purchase order number. Here's some of those dates that we can set and we can you can go through. This can also be preset, but this is the manual method of doing it. So I went ahead and accepted that in. Now let's go ahead and look at some of the settings just to give you an idea. So here's some of the settings that we can preset. As you can see, here's some of those some of those no calculate estimation arrival dates, clear dates, things of that nature. Here's the GL that we assigned to that on the water. This is all going to be done with my Scanco team, but I just, with the help of the Scanco team, but I just kind of want to give you an idea of some of the settings. Any questions here?
Not yet.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and do the first transaction. As I said, I did two. I did an on the water and I did a regular. I just want to show you kind of how they flow. Both of them flow very similarly. The difference is we're going to do two transactions for the first. So I'm going to go ahead and scan in. There we go. I turn my scanner on. And this is those profiles that we were just talking about in the beginning. So these are pulling that information from that profile that we are at and jumping into the actual scanner. So because I just did a receiving or a purchase order, I need to receive it in. I'm going to do by order, saying that I have a purchase order. I need to scan the items and validate against it. My system has me create a new batch, so I'm just going to pull the next batch out of Sage and then do a quick lookup to see all the purchase orders that are in my system. Now I'm in a demo environment, so you can see I have a lot of different purchase orders. Typically, it's going to be a little cleaner, and typically, most customers are going to be barcoding their purchase orders, so you can just scan them. I'm going to select that purchase order, and then I'm going to do a lookup to see all the items that are actually on that purchase order. Select the item 6655 that I'm receiving. This bin location is the receiving location that I'm receiving the goods into. So I'm saying that I am receiving this into a location and saying it's staging here and it's ready to be put away.
Okay.
I'm going to enter my quantity and I'm going to just do an incorrect quantity. So here's one of the first points of validation. We're going to make sure that we're receiving in the correct quantity. So if I receive in 15 and my purchase order calls for 10, obviously the system's going to talk to Sage and say, this is too much. Now, again, if you want to allow over receiving, we can prompt for that. Go ahead and receive it in, and we'll scan another item. So I just scanned the incorrect item. Just another point of validation to point out that we're talking to the system. We're not locking out any purchase orders, so that we know that the correct item is always scanned. I scan the correct item. I default to my receiving bin. And now this is a allotted item. So I know that the masks we have to collect an expiration date, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So I'll go ahead and scan that lot. I have vendor lots turned on saying that my internal lot is Jan 10th, but my vendor lot is something different. I'll just go ahead and say June 10th. And then here's that expiration date. So we're going to collect the expiration date and tie it to that item throughout its life cycle inside of Sage. Any questions so far?
Not yet. All good.
All right. Actually, now we're going to select that quantity. And once we're done, we're going to send it in. This is saying we're done with that PO. Let's go ahead and send it through. And what we did is created that receipt of goods transaction inside of Sage. So that typical manual process that we'll walk through of having to come in here, go to purchase order, go to this receipt of good entry, and do it, we just did.
Update the quantity.
And so that right there will be posted to AP.
Correct.
Okay.
So we still have to post. So
Okay.
you still have to go through, and you have to it's basically another audit point at that. So we're basically saying you still have to do your normal posting processes to make sure everything looks right inside of Sage, but all of the data entry is all completed at this point.
Same thing.
Okay, gotcha.
Now we do have options to automatically post. If you want the system to, as soon as we push through, we can automatically post a receipt of good transaction as well as transfers. But typically people want that extra audit step, I should say.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea, especially with some of the people out here.
So here's that receipt of good transaction. If I come in here to this piece right here, this is your multi-bin distribution chart. Again, we're talking multi-bin system, so we're always going to have more levels when it comes to seeing exactly where it is. So if I clicked on this, it's going to pull that information. It's going to pull that lot number, that receiving location, and what's been distributed to that bin. Questions here so far?
No questions.
All right. So now we're going to jump into, and as I accept this in, and we're going to go do the on the water. So we had that on the water purchase order. Now we have to do the first part inside of Sage because we haven't physically received it in, but we need to take control of that inventory. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull a batch and look up the purchase order for that on the water. I believe it was, this one. Nope. Yeah, let me go back out and look for it. There it is. All right. So here's that on the water piece. So this is the one where we're about to take control of it. The difference between on the water when it comes to doing a receipt of good transaction is we need to apply a container. Basically saying this is the container that this item is shipping from, because we want to be able to tie it to it. So as I do this receipt of good transaction, I'm going to go ahead and hit this next container. It's going to pull the next one inside of Sage and apply it to those lines. Once I accept this, I run my post. So at this point, everything happens like your normal daily operations. Nothing has been physically received in yet. We still have to do that on the handheld. We just said 30 days from now, we're going to receive in 500,000 masks or however many masks we're going to receive in that date. Does that make sense? I don't want to go too fast.
That makes sense.
Okay. So if we go into this receiving container piece right here, and I pull up this container, you're able to see some of the information for that container. Again, we haven't actually received anything in. Actually, I think that was the wrong container. Let's pull the correct one. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to run my post and update my registries. As we kind of go through here. And here's that on the water receipt of goods registry here. This is your first report saying that we've taken ownership of it. We've tied that PO to it, and we have that container number. I'm going to go ahead and just run through this piece, and then we'll receive it in. It's a shared demo system, so usually I have quite a bit to run through. It wasn't as much as usual. Now I want to show you this. There it is. There's that container receipt, and then it shows you that quantity.
Okay,
yeah, I think,
great.
I think they.
All right. There we go. All right, sorry about that. All right, perfect. Now before we jump on the actual scanner, I want to show you what it looks like in item maintenance. So in item maintenance, if I was going to go to 6655, that part number, so that one of those masks, you can actually see what is the quantity that's on the water. But if you go into item inquiry and you look up that item, this is actually not inquiry. Moving too quick, dashboard, there we go. This multi-bin inventory dashboard here, and look it up. You can see all the items that are on the water when they're supposed to receive, and if this receive date was passed, it would let you know that it's expired.
Oh, that's a great function right there.
Yeah, so you can kind of just look through them all and see exactly. And again, we tie that PO number to it as well, so you can see what the PO actually is.
Nice.
All right, now we're gonna actually receive it in on the handheld. We have a lot of different options here. We can do just a typical receive by order, which is what we just did. So you could just receive it in just like a normal one, like a normal PO. But what a lot of customers really like to do is do an on the water receipt of goods. And the difference here is that we're not going to collect those quantities. Now we can, but a lot of customers, because it's typically when you're receiving a container, it's a lot. We don't want to, have them enter the quantity. We just want to receive that in and get it into inventory and validate that. So we'll do it this way because I already showed you the first one, and it was the 1035. We're going to select that warehouse. Again, always going to ask for that bin, and then the pallet number. Pallet number is that container ID. At that point, we receive that container in, and we can receive it into inventory. Now we physically have received it into inventory and said, X number of masks is actually in inventory. It lines up with that purchase order, and we create that receipt of good transaction at a stage. At that point, your landing cost, if there's different landing costs, it's going to adjust in the back end. Questions there, as I showed you both ways to do it.
No questions. I think that's a great function, though. I think that allows us to time out our purchases a little better too, and to be able to let some of our customers know when they can expect to receive goods and whatnot. So I think that's a great
100%.
function.
100%. So on the water is everything that you're hoping for. All right. So next piece, now that we're done with the actual receiving portion, is getting those goods from either a receiving bin or some other location and doing a transfer. Typically, if you don't have the Scanco functionality, you have to go into the inventory or transaction entries inside of Sage. You have to do those transfers in here. So what happens a lot of times is people on the floor, obviously, they forget to do the actual transfer or submit a transfer request. So it's not getting updated in Sage. Because we can leverage Sage, we can do the transfer on the floor, obviously. So if I went to this warehouse transfer piece right here, and I select my warehouse from, so the warehouse that I'm actually working in and where I want to go to, here's where the difference comes in. If I stick in that warehouse, so say I'm going to that warehouse, I'm going to be doing an internal transit or a bin-to-bin transfer, excuse me. This means that it's happening in real time because we don't have to update any of the GLs with a bin-to-bin transfer. So if I select my item that I'm scanning and I select my bin from, let's actually do one. Because I didn't have a quantity, it's going to prompt me. Again, we're going to talk to Sage at all times. Let's find one that we actually have a quantity available. There's a ton in there. In the bin too. we're going to move 150, and you would just kind of follow suit with whatever items you're scanning. Once I confirm, again, this is a dynamic transfer. There's no posting at this point. This happens in real time. Questions on transfer. It's really easy, but it's typically a really important transaction.
That makes sense. Just thinking off the top of my head here. So we have, a lot of times when we're shipping from China, the goods will come into California. In other ports around the country as well. I guess they're thinking about having creating some kind of distribution center out in California because a lot of their clients are out there.
Okay.
Would it be difficult to, I guess, track, the different items that we have on hand in California and then also in Georgia, 2 different locations?
No, so we work multi-company. So if I was, or multi-warehouse, I should say. Okay. So if I went to this warehouse from right here, or this warehouse 2, and I did 001 because that's another warehouse set up, it's going to pull it's going to pull items from that warehouse.
Oh, I see. So you can break it out by warehouse. Okay.
Exactly. So, and kind of backing up even, I was going to show item inquiry next. If I went to 001, so say this is that new distribution center, I can actually see all the items that are in that from any warehouse. So I can see inventory levels, if something's been allocated, if something's on a pallet. So you can see a lot of different information.
Okay, that's great.
So the next thing I wanted to talk through, are we doing any kind of in-transit transfers? Basically saying that we're basically buying it from, creating a purchase order and creating a sales order based off that purchase order and doing an internal transfer. Is there anything like that happening? Or is it strictly just I need to transfer from and to?
Just from and to. There's no internal transfer going on.
Okay. So, and what I should have pointed out, and I didn't because we talked about it, and I'll kind of jump back into the receipt of goods piece before we talk the next piece of transfers. And I'll just grab one of these. This printing button right here, this is where you're going to be able to print those labels. So as we're receiving all these items in, we want to be able to print labels. We can have you automatically print them saying that I enter a quantity of 15 and 15 labels spit out of a printer that's nearby. Or I can prompt you to say how many in a manual is every time I scan an item, it's a quantity of 1.
Okay.
So this is where on the fly printing comes into play, where we literally receiving goods in and we're slapping labels on as they're coming in. All right. And we'll just hit auto, just keep it there. So going back to those transfer piece, now we're going to do a warehouse to warehouse transfer, as we just talked about. It's the same thing as a bin to bin. The only difference is we have to do that posting. So I went ahead and selected my warehouse from and to, select my item and the bin that I'm pulling it from. Again, we're multi-bin, so we're always going to have that extra level of detail. What bin we're going to, I'll just do another lookup. Let's do, and because this is a allotted number or allotted item, we're going to collect that lot. Again, we need to tie that lot always to that allotted item inside of Sage. So I'm going to select a lot that has a quantity available and then select the quantity that we're moving. When I send this through to Sage, we're going to create that transaction entry inside of Sage. As I pull that up. Oops, not registering it. Take silence as a no. All right. So here's that that transaction that we just did. If I pulled up that distribution chart, you can even see the bins that we pulled it from and the lot associated with it. Then you would run your post, and again, we can automatically post this if that's something you'd want to do. Do you think you'd want to post the transfers automatically, or do you want to still have that audit point?
I think it would be good to have the audit point.
Okay, and that's typical.
Yeah, I think, you know, as time goes on and people get a little more comfortable with the process, you might want to do it automatically. But I think at least at the very beginning, having that audit point would be a nice feature.
Yeah, is typical. Most of the time, we want as many validation steps as we can, because it's easy to correct a mistake. It's hard to fix something that's already gone out or already been posted.
Exactly.
All right. So that's transfers piece. Jumping into the next piece of transfers is the move full bin and the directed put away. A couple things we can do here, and this is going to be directed put away will be an add-on, so that's why I want to talk through it. Directed put away basically says we build a replenishment report from the time where we receive something in and push everything into inventory. So what does that mean? So you create a list when it comes to receiving, and create a list to put those away. So it's like saying, here's your list, go put all this in, go put all this away. We're going to base it on logic that is associated with the bins that it needs to go. So you need to go to this bin because of min and max levels are a certain way. Is that something we want to look into, or do we want to start more stock standard and just say a transfer or a move full bin will work?
So is directed put away just kind of a batch entry for multiple receivables at one time?
Correct.
What's the difference? Okay.
Correct.
You know, that might be something that we would look into. I don't think we're purchasing enough at this point to where we would need that necessarily. But I mean, it's something to bring up to them and see if they're interested in. It's, I guess.
And
it's
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it's a good feature to have and something that we can run by the owners to see if they'd be interested in it. So it's good to know about.
We'll talk through it for sure. And the nice thing is you'll learn and you'll kind of come to find out is with us as you kind of, I just look at even through the advanced pieces, we have a lot of different functionality here. And we can start really simple. We can start with doing the on the water receiving transfers. And then in a month, you could say, all right, we're ready to start doing the put away. And it's as easy as calling myself or calling Brian to do a quick presentation and to get it installed in your system. So it's not, we're really scalable, and we did that on purpose.
Okay.
So going back to the move full bin piece, which is something that is included with what we're talking about, is we're able to move an entire bin of items to another location. So if we wanted to, a lot of times this comes into like a receiving and a WIP or a work in progress, or if you just want to move an entire bin that's associated with a customer to a shipping location, we can do that all in one swoop rather than selecting all the items. So I'm going to select my from bin, and then it's going to ask me if it's items, I want all the items that are included or all the non-allocated items, saying any items that are allocated to an order I can't move, or all the items in the bin. I'll do non-allocated and then the to bin. At that point, you'd send it through. And again, because we're talking about bin to bin movement, there's no updating in EGL. So it's a dynamic movement at that point. Dynamic meaning real time. Questions on move full bin?
No questions.
All right. Put this in real quick before it dies. My phone almost died on us. That would have been awkward to start talking to myself. All right. So next is the physical count piece. And I know that we want to start doing at least some cycle counting. So we're going to jump in and talk about the count by bin process. Brian, how in depth did you get into on the physical count piece when you went through the, are they going to be doing the physical count, I should say?
It's not being done now, but it's definitely something that they want to do moving forward. We didn't dive real deep into it, other than I let them know that they get 5 of those licenses at no charge.
Perfect. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, that's something that we'll definitely have to do at the beginning. Right now, we're really not sure how much is on hand. And so we'll definitely need to start off.
So, and so there's a lot of different ways that we can do physical counts. And I'm just going to come in here and clear these out real quick because I'm in a shared environment. But we're going to be working off of these worksheets right here that Sage has. When we do physical counts, what we aim to eliminate is the data entry and the paper movement. Just like all the other transactions, we're taking what Sage has and we're filling it through a scanner so that we don't have to walk paperwork and we don't have to do any kind of keying in. Typically, if you don't have a scanner, what you do is you print one of these worksheets dependent on the fields that we have down here. We'll talk a little bit about them. And then you basically take a clipboard and you just mark off everything and make sure everything's correct. You turn it in, and if there's lots associated, you have to write those numbers down. So there's a lot of errors that can happen and that can occur. Well, how Scanco works is we take these same worksheets and we add a couple fields based on multi-bin. If you can see down here, like multi-bin cycle count, where we can count multi-bin locations based on different ranges that we want to set. So if we want to do A through D on Mondays to do a true cycle count, we can set it that way. So we can start to get into that cycle counting. But how we interact with Sage as I go into physical count entry, where you typically would do the data entry, and I'll just do 000. Is we ask for that starting bin. So the first bin typically in line of that worksheet. And then we start scanning. Now you'll notice it's not a directed count. This is for obvious reasons. Best practices is we want to make sure that everyone's doing a blind count so that we can have accurate variances. Just going to scan a couple items. At the top here, you can see once I'm done with this bin, you can go to the next bin that's in line based on how it's set up inside your system. This is actually a serialized item, so I'm going to go ahead and scan my serial number. I'll let that pull up. And we'll send that through since we just did a couple. So once I come through here, you can see all the items that I just did. At that point, you run your variance and you see if there's any discrepancies. If there isn't, you're good to go. If not, you can just call down to whoever's doing the scanner and say, go scan said item and bin again to make sure the quantity on hand is correct.
Okay.
Questions with physical count. This is typically where you're going to see your fastest ROI.
No questions right now. I think that's great, though. It's a great feature.
And as Brian said, you're going to get 5 extra licenses. So how the Scanco warehouse application works is it's licensed per device. Because we're so tightly knitted with Sage, we have what we call mobility for barcode, which is something that will be included on the quote for Sage for the version you're going to. But this includes 5 extra physical count licenses. So when you're doing counts, that big physical count throughout the year, you can have those extra licenses with no cost.
And so those are 5 additional scanners?
5 additional licenses. You still have to have the scanners.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So, and as we see the quote, the licenses typically dictate the price of the quote. So the Scanco warehouse licenses are typically about $1,650, so $1,650 per license. So you can see that those 5 physical count licenses, it's quite it's a big number that you're getting back.
Great.
All right. So that's the physical count portion. Just so you know, the count by item is more of just that blind approach of saying, go count an item that's inside. So if I select my warehouse, I'm just going to start scanning an item and saying what bin I actually did it from. So it's a little less of a directed, I guess, route, as count by bin is best business practice.
Okay.
But you get both options, so I like to show both. All right. All right, now we're going to talk about the shipping side of things. And correct me if I'm wrong, did we want to do a directed pick, or did we want to do more of a quick pick? So do we want logic involved with picking our shipments, or do we want to basically say, go pick this because we know where it's at, but it's based off this sales order? If you need me to clarify, I can.
Wait, so what do you mean by picking shipments? What's this for?
This is for picking sales orders.
Okay.
So typically you have a pick list and you're going throughout your warehouse and you're picking it. We're going to take that pick list and we're going to put it on a scanner, but we have a lot of different options when it comes to picking. We have what we call quick picking, and this says this is your sales order. All you have to do is scan and validate the items are on that sales order.
Okay.
Order picking says you have that sales order. We know based on how your bins are set up, this is the route you need to go throughout your warehouse. So it's going to say scan item 6655 because it's closer than 8971, and go pull it from this bin because it has a quantity of 10 while the other one has a quantity of 11.
Okay.
So that was the simplest version I could come with.
Yeah, no, I think order picking would be great. The warehouse is actually, it's very large.
Okay.
I think the order picking would be better. What are your thoughts?
So I typically always will push for order picking because we want a system like this to be efficient.
Okay.
And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for efficiencies and streamlining a process.
Okay.
Another reason I really like order picking and wave picking is because if you hire someone on new and they don't know the warehouse, it's really nice to be able to say, go pick it from this bin. It's a lot easier to find this bin number rather than just saying, I'm going to go find this item and hope it's in this bin.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I think that's the way to go.
Okay. So the only other question is, and I'm going to throw a wrench in that whole conversation, order picking versus wave picking. They do the same thing, but wave picking lets you basically batch a ton of sales orders together. So you can say, I have 5 sales orders. I'm going to go pick them at one time, while order picking is 1 sales order at a time.
I think wave picking would be best because of their shipping terms and the way it's all set up. A lot of times there will be multiple sales orders for the exact same quantity of items, the exact same items, and it's basically just duplicate orders.
Gotcha.
And so wave picking actually seems like it would be better bet here.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go with wave picking. So I'm going to create a couple sales orders.
Okay.
I don't think I know one to copy from, so I'm just going to go through the whole process. I'll do another one. Good. 526. So I'm going to create one more.
Okay.
I'm just going to do a copy from. And I'm going to throw another item on here as well. Since my warehouse is a little messed up. All right, perfect. So we're going to go into wave picking. Again, we're always going to prompt you. It's going to look the same. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for a reason. So it's going to look very similar every transaction. We're going to notice it's going to ask you for the sales orders. So I can either, like always, type in, so 526, and add that sales order to the list. Or I can do a lookup if I don't know it, or I can scan. So I just added 2 sales orders to it. These buttons, this little 3 buttons shows me what these mean at the top. If you already know, you just hit start my pick. And it's going to shoot you with some info just saying that this is how many line items we need to pick. All 4 of these items are in the warehouse. Again, this is really nice for those employees that are not really familiar with the warehouse so that they know everything's there and what they need to pick. And then it's going to direct them through the warehouse. So it's going to say, go scan item 6655 this is the bin you need to pull it from, and here's the quantity inside that bin to pull it from.
Gotcha.
I'm going to scan to validate that it's the correct item. Just another audit point to make sure we're picking the correct items. And select my quantity. So here's that next one. Because I made 2 sales orders, it's going to say, go pick this for this sales order as well, because you're right there. So it's using that logic to say, you're right there, go pick that. Then it's going to direct you to the next one, and it's just going to follow suit. It's a allotted item, so I'm going to go ahead and select my lot and my quantity. This is telling me there's only 17 available here, so I need to pick the correct amount. Now, as you can see, it's still stuck on that same item because, again, we needed to use that logic and say, we're using that logic and saying, now we can go pick the remaining 3.
Okay.
So it just directed us to another bin. And then I'm going to go ahead. I don't have this one barcoded, so I'm going to actually type this one in. Questions so far?
Nope.
All right. Select my quantity. And now my pick is done. So it's gonna automatically tell me my pick is done. And we're gonna submit it. So what we just did is we allocated all those items to those sales orders inside the stage. We still have to ship them out, but we did the allocations ahead of time and confirmed that we picked the right items.
Okay.
So I just pulled up inside the stage. If you go to, oops, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question. So, ideally we'd like to be able to sell the masks and the items with expiration dates that are, coming up pretty soon. Is there a way to identify where the items are with, the closer expiration dates? Because we would typically like to sell those first.
So yes. So, and as I just pulled up, here's those the allocations. So inside the multi-bin settings, let me see if I can just go through here. Trying to remember exactly where it is. We have what we call FIFO, which is first expiration. There it is, expiration date FIFO. So this is going to pull those expiration dates. So if an expiration date's tied, so obviously you have to, during the time of receipt, tie that expiration date. And then once we're ready to pick it, once this setting is turned on, it's going to pull it by those expiration dates.
Okay, great.
So now that we've picked those items and we've allocated them to the sales order, we have to do our second audit point, which is the shipping side. So we're physically going to box this up and ship them. Do we know if we're going to do shipping data entry or invoice data entry, shipping data entry, collecting box level detail, or we're just going to go straight into invoicing? Or is it undecided?
Right now I think we're going straight into invoicing. I'm not sure if they want to do it going forward, but right now we're just doing invoicing.
And the big difference. Oh, go ahead.
And that's what we showed on the demo.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to jump into invoicing, and I'm going to select the sales order that I just did. So we'll do 526 because I remember it. You're going to be able to see all the items that are on that sales order. So again, the process is going to look very similar to what we just did. It's that second step of saying we're going to pick it, we're going to stage it, now we're going to pack it, and we want to validate everything's correct. If I do a bin lookup on an order that's been picked, it's going to show me the bin in green that the item's been allocated for already. So it's going to make us pick this because this is the bin that we allocated it for. Again, just to show it, there's 2 bins in this case. We're going to look at the lot. It's a lotted item, so we're going to pull that lot. And as you can see, because we allocated that and assigned that lot, it's going to have that. Now, if this was an expiration date attached to it, it's also going to make sure that you validate the correct expiration date associated with it. Oops. Again, that quantity is incorrect for that warehouse, so I'm going to go ahead and hit 17 and then follow suit. Any questions so far as I just run through the rest of the transaction?
Nope.
All right. Select the correct bin. Select the correct lot. I'll just scan it because I know. And the remaining 3. At this point, we send it through. And in invoice data entry, we created that inside of Sage. Should be this one. And there we are. And if we pulled up that lot distribution, we can see the bins that we pulled it from. Here's those expiration dates that would be tied to it, associated with it, as well as those lot numbers.
Perfect.
All right. So that is pretty much everything that we talked about, starting obviously from the time of receiving to the time that the goods are actually coming out. Is there anything that I missed so far as we talk next steps, or are we pretty good with everything to do what you're looking for it to do?
No, I think that pretty much covered everything that we were looking for. I think it hits on, the inventory piece that we're really struggling with right now. And so I think this would be a great add-on for us.
Gotcha. So my next step is to put together numbers for you. Obviously, we have to get this in front of the owners. Are the owners aware of the project? I'm assuming they are. And yes. When do we plan on meeting with them to kind of review everything?
So yes, they're aware of what we're doing right now. So ideally, I think we'd like to go to them within the next 2 to 3 weeks to give them a proposal with all of the products that we've been looking into. 1 second. And so Megan will have a better idea of a timeline on that, but I think we're looking at within the next 2 to 3 weeks and presenting all this to them.
Okay, so once we basically propose this to the owners, what's the next steps for them? Do they have a plan? Do they need to see a demo, or is it basically at that point it's what we're going with and we're going to sign off, or we're not going to sign off with whatever said project is?
So I think they're going to, they might want to speak to you just regarding a few of the aspects of the product, but I think for the most part, they've given us a significant amount of responsibility in choosing this. And so they're really taking our opinion into account here. So I think, we should be able to get an answer, pretty soon.
Gotcha. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and put together those numbers. I'll get it over to Brian, and Brian will get it over to you. Now, I wanted to shore up the licenses. I have on my notes that we're going to start with 3. Is that still the case, or is it more or less?
I think that sounds about right, at least for the beginning part. As they grow, we'll probably want to add more licenses to it. But to start off, I think 3 would be a good number.
All right. Now, my next question is, I'm going to quote out 3 licenses and 3 devices. Do we want to look at extra devices for those physical count licenses so that when we're ready for the physical count, we can do them? If you expand on your license count later, those licenses will transfer over to those devices too.
I think 3 is good to start. Right now, there's not too many people in the warehouse to begin with.
Gotcha.
So I think 3 would be good.
Okay.
The warehouse is actually under construction right now, and so there's not too many people there.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and put this together. I think I have everything I need. I would like to set up a call either next week or the following week just to touch base if there's any questions that came up on the quote, so you and I can kind of continue the project along and not lose track. Does that work for you?
Absolutely. Let me touch base with Megan on what her availability looks like next week, and I can send you guys out an email on times that work for us.
Perfect. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this together. I don't think I've put together a customer page for you yet, so I'm gonna go do that as well. Basically, it's just gonna have some ROI calculators and things like that I know ownership will like to see. And then if you can shoot me some times that work for next week or the week after, that way we can all touch base, see where the project stands, see if any questions come up, and we'll go from there.
Okay, absolutely.
Awesome. Brian, do you have anything to add? I know I've stolen most of the spotlight today.
No, it was your show, man. I just sat back and watched.
All right. Well, I hope you learned something as well. Always learning is something I like to say.
I did. Get the recording out to me. I'd like to pass it along to my team members too, because they've never sold this piece before. So I think it'd be good
on the water app.
Yeah,
on the water. It's a cool function. It's one of those things. If you need it, you know you need it, and it's really cool.
Right.
And so I'll get that to you. I'll get a quote over to you so you can get it to Alex and his team. At that point, I think we're good right now, gentlemen.
And then one other thing to add, Alex, let Megan know that I have a call scheduled tomorrow with the partner who's going to do your project. And so the next steps there for us and you all would be to have a joint call with them so they can kind of scope the project and get you some numbers on what it would cost to put this all together.
Okay, great.
Right.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everyone's time. I look forward to working on the rest of this project with you. And again, if any questions come up, Alex or Brian, feel free to reach out to me.
Good deal.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks, gentlemen.
Bye-bye.